Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Verdicts Vogue. I'm Cristina Perez Hesano from Perez Law Group, and I'm here with Brenda Echevarria. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. So, as is customary, cheers.
Cheers.
It is now officially afternoon. All right. So I'm excited to sit down and talk to you today. I want the viewers to get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So as you said, my name is Brenda Echevarria, and I was born in Anaheim, California. I have been in Arizona since I was 6 years old. My mom and dad are both originally from Mexico. So my mom was born in Mexico City. That's where she was raised. And my father was somewhere near, it's called San Nicolas, which is near Toluca.
Okay.
And then they met in California, where I was born. And then we moved here when I was 6. I went to Washington High School. Go Rams. And from there, I went to Arizona State University, and I went to law school in Orlando.
All right. Well, I saw Sophia raise her hand for Go Rams. Did you go to Washington High School too? Oh, you just said Go Rams? No.
Oh, you did?
You did. That's Adonis, who's here taking pictures and avoiding the spiders. But just kidding. So one of the things I found interesting. So for those who don't know, for the viewers who are joining us today, I met Brenda not too long ago. You currently work for the Legal Advocates.
That's right.
And before that, you also worked for
Morgan & Morgan.
Okay. And then before that, you worked for State Farm.
Yes.
And so I thought it was so interesting that you have the perspective of working for State Farm as a claims rep.
That's right.
And then deciding to go to law school. So let's unfold that a little bit. Let's unpackage that.
Okay. So I think I'll go back a little bit before State Farm.
Perfect.
Because before that, I actually used to work in collections, which a lot of people don't really associate lawyering with a bill collector. But I would say that a lot of my skills I actually developed doing collections, because I worked for basically when people did not have car insurance. So the collection agency I worked with, their client was State Farm. And that's kind of how long-term I ended up with State Farm. But initially it was doing collections. Their client was State Farm. And so whenever there was a car accident, the person did not have insurance, then they would send those claims to collections. And my job was to basically recover those people that did not have insurance.
So I don't know if you know this, but I used to do bankruptcy and I dealt with a lot of debt collectors, and some of them can be really nice, but most of them are not.
Yes, that's right. And it's a crowd that you do not want to be in. I remember thinking I was like a little girl, 18, sweet little Brenda. And I was like, oh my God, these people are scary, And I worked there for probably like 3 years. And I ended up doing really well but I always did really nice. I would say that my approach is more like you get more with honey than with vinegar.
Okay.
So I would set up people on payment plans, like $25, $30, $50, and I would build those up. So basically, by the time the month started, I was like halfway through my goal for commission.
Okay.
And then I would settle all the time, like 50 cents on the dollar. And then the other thing I learned about is that we could actually request for their suspensions for their driver's license. Because in Arizona, as long as there was a police report and we had a no coverage letter from the insurance company, then we can send it to the Department of Motor Vehicles. The people would get a letter saying their license is going to be suspended because they have this unpaid debt. And then they would call to pay. So I would get a lot of people to pay that way as well. So
you're resourceful is what you're saying.
So I'm resourceful. Yes.
And that's one of the main. So when we have a case now where someone doesn't have insurance, that's one of the tools that we use, where we'll go ahead and get a judgment and then get their license suspended and eventually collect. But I know that because of my history with being a bankruptcy attorney and understanding the collection side of it.
Mm-hmm. I know it's interesting because there is that whole side to it. And then from there, I got the job at State Farm because by then I graduated college.
And when you graduated college, you went to ASU and you graduated with what type of degree?
With a communications degree. So at the time, I had no idea that I would later pursue a law degree. I kind of just was, as I said, my mom and dad came from Mexico. So they said, you need to get a degree. Good luck. And I knew I needed something. So I was like, yeah, I guess I'll do communications.
And so as you're saying this, I'm thinking back to our dinner. So for those who don't know, Brenda and I, after we met, recently, after we met, we also met up for dinner. And it was kind of it was a funny night. We ended up deciding to meet at Hillstone. And I ended up somehow with my son to this dinner. So I brought him along with his dinosaur egg that hatched during dinner. It's like a cool toy. But anyway, so he was there. And then my husband and my daughter showed up to pick him up. It was kind of a little bit of a shit show, right? And so Brenda's like smiling throughout the whole thing. And I'm apologizing because I'm like, okay, this is kind of what happens, what you got to do with to be a mom. And Brenda, you were so cool. You were like, oh, I should just brought my daughter because she's about the same age. And, you know, yeah. I'm like, okay, good. And for the most part, he behaved pretty well until he started saying, you know, I'm really bored because we were talking about work. And then my husband picked him up. But during that dinner, I learned that we have a lot of similarities when it comes to our upbringing. Right. So we had a lot of similarities with our parents were born in another country.
Yes.
And the fact that they want a better life for us, but sometimes didn't know how to actually achieve that.
Yes.
So that's kind of where when you said, okay, so my family said, okay, get a college degree. So I was pushed to go to school too. But there was really no guidance as to how to get to that next step, where like filling out your FAFSA and going all through all that. So, and I'm assuming that you also had that same experience.
Exactly.
So
yes.
Tell us about that.
So, you know, preparing for today, I was talking to my husband. His name is Carlos. And I was saying, Carlos, you know, like, what do you think I should tell people who are maybe interested in pursuing like a doctorate or law school or something like that? And he said, well, this is what you did. And he's like, you surrendered yourself by people that you wanted to be like. So first step one is to have the right environment around you. So I met Carlos at the time, and he's the one that kind of was like, why don't you just go to law school? And he was kind of the first person to make me believe it was a possibility for me to do
And
something.
how long were you working at State Farm at that time when you decided to go to law school?
At that time, I had been with State Farm approximately like 2 or 3 years.
And you were doing claims. So you were essentially the person who handled the negotiation side for State Farm.
Yes. So when I started with State Farm, initially I started with the homeowner side. So I investigated claims for like fire, wind, hail, anything that was reported under the homeowner's policy.
Okay.
But then after that, I really wanted to make a little more money. So I decided to go to the in-language team. And
what does that mean, in-language team?
It was kind of like a group of us, and we all spoke a different language. So most of us spoke Spanish.
Okay.
But there was a few other people that spoke Mandarin. And all day long I would hear, ni hao, this is Rose. Ni hao, this is Rose. And so I joined the in-language team.
Okay.
And I would say for me, that was probably another point in life where it was a growing point, because it's where I really embraced my Spanish speaking community. And so for now, I definitely embrace it. But up until then, I really didn't realize the skill or the tool that I had by speaking Spanish. But at the time, because I wanted to go to the in-language team, you had to take an assessment. And in order to pass, you couldn't speak like unprofessional. It had to be more a professional Spanish. Sure. So I would start watching TV, and I started conversing more and making more of an effort to, again, speak Spanish fluently, because even though it was my first language, I mostly spoke English by the time I was like in my 20s, you know? And so I started to fine tune my Spanish.
Okay.
And then I went to the in-language team. And so now I would say probably 80-90% of my clients are Spanish speaking.
And so you were saying that, so one of the things that you would tell people, you were talking to Carlos and you said, okay, what would be one thing? Surround yourself with people that you want to emulate and that you look up to.
Right. And the most important thing is to have a mentor, have somebody to kind of guide you, because that kind of goes back to our conversation. I didn't have my mom and dad to say, okay, you have to do your FAFSA. Okay, now you have to do this. But if you find a mentor, that person can kind of say, okay, well, have you done this? These are kind of the steps. And it could be somebody that can guide you to that path.
So now, was Carlos your mentor?
I would say yes. He's definitely been a mentor of mine. Like even when I was studying for the bar prep, I remember, you know, there's like a few different companies that offer, and he would kind of tell me, okay, well, what about this one or this one? And he's kind of the one that was like, Chucky, because that's what he calls me. Chucky, you have to do 100 questions a day. Did you do your 100 questions? Chucky, did you do your 100 questions? And then he would constantly be on me about like.
And it's so funny because growing up, my parents, I mean, I love my parents and they've raised 3 lawyers, but they were never strict with homework or structure or going bedtime or certain They were kind of like just free for all, right? Like you'd fall asleep when you fell asleep and you would, and so it's very different than how I raised my kids. Like more, I would say I'm like more militant in a way, but probably because my parents were so lax, right? Because they did the best that they can, but they didn't know how to, they didn't, I would say didn't know any better in a way.
Yeah, so, exactly. Mine were similar. Like I remember I would set my alarm to go to school in high school. And I remember telling my dad, I can't be late anymore. But he would always try to instill in me responsibility. So he would say, well, if you want to go, which is crazy. Like he would tell me this, but then you have to set your alarm, And so I would set my alarm to make sure. But in a way, it did teach me a lot of responsibility.
Sure.
Carlos, though, is the opposite. His mommy did everything for him. So, it's been, I think, a tougher to get him to do the things on his own.
That's so funny. It's when you think about it, like, what's the best approach, right? Because my mom, though, I will tell you, my mom, she was always very insistent and very pushy about things. I mean, she did push school. She did. If it wasn't for my mom, I would have taken a different path. My mom has been, because my dad worked all the time. My mom was home, but she was always on top of what we were doing, basically, like trying to keep us out of trouble, because I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. So trying to keep us out of trouble. And so she always supported our extracurricular activities and also basically had us involved in school things. But when it came to, degrees, they would always say, okay, go to school, be a lawyer, be something. But my parents did push me to be more. But how I got there was because they just said, you have to do more, but they didn't really give me the tools to do more. It was more of kind of me figuring out on my own.
Yes. Similar.
Yeah. Okay. So then that was a case when you're at State Farm, then Carlos says, hey, why don't you become a lawyer?
That's right. So at State Farm, for some reason I decided I was going to do something called a CPCU, which is kind of like a master's in risk when you're in property insurance. But then he's like, how long is it going to take to do that? And I said, it takes about 3-4 years. And he's like, well, in that case, how long does it take to go to law school? So I was like, 3 years. So he's like, why don't you just become a lawyer then? And I think I told him, I was like, yeah, why don't I become a lawyer? And then from there, that's when I was like, okay, let me take step by step, like step 1, do the LSAT. Okay. And I remember at the time I asked my dad, I said, hey dad, could I borrow $1,000 so that I can pay for, I can't remember the name of the program, but I went in person for like 6 weeks.
Like Barbary or Kaplan, one of the two.
Something like that. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And then I did the LSAT. I applied basically everywhere. And I had a really good scholarship in Orlando, which is where I ended up going.
And so you ended up going to what school?
It's called Berry Law School. It's a Catholic university in the main university is in Miami, but the law school's in Orlando.
Okay, so you end up going there. And then the next part, while you're in Orlando, then you find out the next milestone in your life.
Yes. And so I get to Orlando. Life is going to be wonderful. I'm thinking I'm going to go be a lawyer. I'm going to live in Orlando. I get there. I don't have a place to live yet. I'm living in a hotel with a big dog. And then I found out I was pregnant. And I thought, oh my gosh, somebody wake me up from this nightmare. This has to be a nightmare. Please pinch me, God. And I never woke up from that. I'm still living it.
So first, what kind of dog were you living with in the hotel?
Okay, so his name is Bam Bam.
Okay.
And he's a cane corso, he was like 13 at the time. So he was like barely surviving, but he was my only companion too. So I was like, you got to make it. We're in this together, Bam Bam.
And then you find out you're pregnant, and what do you do next?
I was by myself. My mom and dad are here. And I don't think I mentioned this part, but I grew up in a very Catholic upbringing. My father's a deacon in the Catholic Church. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't tell my mom and dad. They're going to be so disappointed. There's no way I can tell them. But by now it's like I'm no spring chicken either, So
it's so funny when you say that, because like that's how old were you when you had?
At the time I was 30 already. So, it wasn't like I was 20.
We were just talking about that earlier about geriatric pregnancies, and that's what they labeled a 35-year-old pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly. I was borderline there. So I thought, okay, I have to get through this. And so I remember thinking I'm going to get through the first year with the baby in my stomach, and I guess I'll worry about next year.
And when did you tell your parents?
Like 8 months into my pregnancy.
Stop.
I was super pregnant by the time I told them. Yeah, because it's not like they saw me. Nobody saw me.
Oh, I didn't know this part of the story.
Yeah, nobody saw me for the longest time.
Okay, so this is not part of the legal conversation that we were going to have, but I need to know. So you find out you're pregnant. You decide, you know what? Let's not burden my parents with this news just yet, or I don't want to deal with it yet. Exactly. I'm not going to see them for some time. And so when was the first time that you told them?
So I remember I was going to come home for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Or Christmas. No, it must have been Christmas. Yeah, because I spent that Thanksgiving alone. Well, with Bam Bam.
Okay.
But I had to tell them before Christmas because I was going to see them. So I want to say, I think I told them around like Thanksgiving. And I told my mom first.
Okay.
And
You always tell the mom first.
Yeah. And then I told her to please tell my dad. And she did.
What did your mom say?
She was in shock. She was like, I can't believe this, Brenda. What are you going to do? And I was like, well, I already have my plan. I'm going to sit this through. I'm going to get through law school. And, I got this, Mom.
I don't know how, but I got this. So then you go home for Christmas.
Then I go home for Christmas.
And how many months pregnant are you?
By now, I'm probably like 7 months pregnant.
And then your dad sees you for the first time.
And my dad sees me for the first time. And, it was like the unspoken scarlet letter. Like, we didn't talk about it. It was obvious. But we just never really talked about it. It was kind of just... Okay.
He just ignored the fact that you were showing, and like he just...
And I remember,
or had to reach around you to give you a hug.
I remember too at the time thinking like, am I going to be able to like go back to Carlos's house for Christmas break, or am I going to have to go back to my mom and dad's every night? Because I was already pregnant, so it would be ridiculous to have to go back to my mom and dad's.
But it's expected because
because of my upbringing.
It's like a cultural thing, right? You have to go. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I would always sleep in separate rooms from like a boyfriend. I think even when I was dating Chris, I hid that I was living with Chris for a little bit as well, because my dad was so strict. And I was 28 years old, and I was not telling him that I was living with I don't think we told his mom or my parents that we were living together for probably a good 3-4 months. I was hiding it and did not allow them to come into my apartment for some reason. I always made the worst excuses because of the same reason.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think my sister also did the same thing. I'm pretty sure she was living with her boyfriend in Tucson. Yeah, because we went to visit her and she would not let me in the apartment.
I also grew up in a very traditional, strict household. So yeah, so it's common for me, and apparently for you and your family too.
Yes, exactly. And so we didn't really talk about it, but of course I knew that I needed my mother's help because I was going to eventually give birth.
Sure.
And I was by myself in Orlando. And so anyway, I gave birth. I remember it was May 8th on a Monday, and I did my oral argument that same Friday because it was my 1L year.
Okay.
And the 1L year, you do your oral argument kind of at the end of the semester, the second semester. At least that's how it was at Barry. And yeah, I showed up 4 days after giving birth.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember my professor actually couldn't even believe it. I think he felt so bad for me that he actually gave me the highest grade in the class. I don't think it's because I killed it up there. I think he was like,
I think you're being modest. You probably just killed it. You probably were like, I'm going to get this. I have all of this energy.
Well, I did think I just gave birth. Like, this cannot be tougher than that.
So you did that. And so now, was your mom with you? Did she she end up going to Florida to help you?
Yeah. So my mom flew out like 4 days after I gave birth, and she stayed there until the end of the semester because then a couple weeks after I gave birth, it was the finals. And then I came home for the summer.
And so you came home for the summer and now Carlos, was he in medical school yet, or was he going through medical school? Because I know he's a doctor.
Yes. No. So Carlos was already done with medical school. He was already done with his residency, but he was just working.
Okay.
So at the time he was working as a hospitalist in the ER, or I guess in the emergency room.
Okay. And then what did you do when you went back for second year 2?
Yeah. And so I went back by myself with the baby, and basically I just dropped off the baby in childcare, and I went to my classes and I would pick her up after.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was kind of like a single mom for the first 2 years.
So she was so then it was you, your puppy, and...
Oh, yeah. So I returned the dog. So
I have a companion now. Peace.
Yeah. Just kidding. Yeah. So I returned the dog because I was like, I can't handle...
That's a lot.
He was an old dog too. He could barely walk up the stairs at that point.
Oh, well. Okay.
Yeah. So he came back home. He stayed with Carlos, and I went back with Eva, my daughter.
And it's so my daughter's named Eva, and Ava. So you had Ava, and she spent the next 2 years. Did you ever find yourself having to bring her to class?
No, I never did take her to class. But, it was like, I remember I never really got an opportunity to do like internships and things like that. So when I graduated and I passed the bar, I felt a lot of pressure of getting a job because I remember thinking I never really have any experience when it comes to the legal side because I was so busy with my daughter. She was just, born.
But you have a ton of experience because you work for State Farm as a claims agent, right?
And so that helped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect place to pause. In part 2, Brenda shares how she balances law, family, and giving back. We'll see you next time on Verdicts in Vogue.